Are you going to visit us, Sunitha?
Are
you
not
going to
this
visit?
next year. Next year for sure. Yes. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So who wants to start? Madhuri or Jayashri or yeah.
ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवतां नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वाम् अनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी.
Jayashri?
Namostute. I'm sorry, should I start from Namostute?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Namostute Vyasaya Vishalabudde Pullaravindaya Tapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Tailapurnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrududuhe Namaha.
वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः।
So, we are now in the range of the 20th to 23rd shloka of 13th chapter. So, up to the 19th chapter, we have seen that, Lord Krishna has completed like 4 topics out of the 6 topics, right? So, what are the 6 topics? We have the Kshetram, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Jneyam, and now only 2 of them are left, which is Purusha and Prakriti, right? So from now, from the 20th onwards up to the 24th verse, Lord Krishna is now going to see these 2 topics, which is Purusha and Prakriti. And because both Purusha and Prakriti are closely connected, so Lord Krishna is actually going to deal with them not one by one like he did in the previous times. He always, like in the shlokas 5 and 6, for example, we saw what Kshetram was. And then, we started to discuss about what Kshetrajna is. But here you will see that, both these topics, Purusha and Prakriti, will be done parallelly. Okay. And sometimes, like parallelly, simultaneously, everything, very closely knit, because it's almost like, you cannot understand what Purusha is without understanding what Prakriti is. And Prakriti is what, we are easily able to visualize. I mean, Prakriti is what everything, in Shloka fifth one or sixth one, he says about how, Prakriti is, the five senses and the Jnanendriyas, which is the senses, there are Karmendriyas, everything, including mind, intellect, and ego, everything. So this is something we already know. But in the context of Prakriti, how does Purusha figure? So that part of it is what we're coming to understand in the shlokas 20th through 23rd. If we can finish up to 23rd, that'll be great. But they're all again such heavy topics, So that is what we are going to understand here. So for all practical purposes, actually, we can understand, since all of you are, such advanced students of Bhagavad Gita and everything, you can understand that Purusha is nothing but Brahman. And we can understand Prakriti as Maya. So in a sense, this is just to put it in context, because we shouldn't think, what is this Purusha? What is this Prakriti? And typically these words, Purusha and Prakriti, they are more, very commonly used in Sankhya philosophy. And really, very rarely do we see this being used in Vedanta. So you will see for our own understanding, I'm just kind of already coming to understanding you what it is all about. So just a little bit of recap is, so we spoke about Kshetra topic in 5 and 6, and the reason for putting all this up is so that you'll be able to connect the shlokas 5 and 6 to the Prakriti. So in here, Prakriti was talked about, literally the 24 aspects. Again, going back to connecting it to the Purusha and Prakriti of Sankhya philosophy, there are about 24 aspects, which includes, all this Mahatattvas, the five great elements, space, earth, fire, etc., all that. And then it includes, of course, the intellect and others. It also includes the seven modifications by which, as a jiva, we come in contact with the world. So, these modifications, you may ask, what is it? How come I don't know about it? Well, it is really part of our own personality. It is all these things about this kama, krodha, lobha, moha, all these things. So, for us to work in this world, we are needing, we kind of exhibit all these emotions. I mean, without desire, how can we act in this world, right? So the field, this is really what that kshetra also looks like. So it works like a machine, but it is, I mean, that by itself cannot work, right? All these are jada padartha, we call them. They're inert. So we need that something to bring it to life. And as we always use, I mean, from time immemorial, when I say time immemorial, I think when it is from Swami Chinmayananda's days at least, that we've always heard this example of electricity and the bulb, electricity and the bulb, everything, right? So it is like all this kshetra is like the bulb. Now, without that electricity, there is just no way that the bulb is going to work, or the fridge is going to work, or a microwave and everything, including our AI tools. I mean, it's amazing how much of AI tools now we have to be understand, right? We started initially with Chat GPT or something like that. Now we are into, I mean, it's just multiplying like crazy. I won't even go there, but all this perplexity and all this is already last year. This year we don't know how many more. So even for that AI to work, which is so passive intelligence. I call that passive intelligence. Uh, yes, artificial intelligence is good, but it's passive intelligence. Even for that to work, we need this awareness, or this Purusha aspect, or the Brahman aspect, okay? What the name, whatever we call. So this aspect, so that source, which we call the source, that eternal essence, is a name which we saw from the shlokas of 12 to 17. 7 to 11 was just setting up the stage, they were basically all those means that we talked about. So the field, this name is something that we need to know, and that name acts as an upadhi, something which, as though some, so that is something we really have to do. So it's almost like, again, going back to the standard example, which without this example, I think, it'll be really hard for us to clearly understand Vedanta in our minds, but it's the ocean and the waves. So, whenever we are attracted by that surfing, when you see a surfer dance on the waves, okay, we will never be able to really appreciate that entire beauty, the grandeur of that entire ocean, because all our attention is always on that surfer who's riding the waves. Now, these waves are basically, if you think about it seriously, we are so focused on the waves that we're not able to see the ocean or the water behind it. So these waves are nothing but they are like the conditioners, upadis, we call them, because they limit our understanding of the ocean. So similarly, in order for us to understand this jnayam, which is talked about in the 12 to 17 shlokas, if we have to understand the essence, we have to learn how to gradually minimize that impact of the upadhis of the field. Okay? So we are living in this world. We are conditioned by all the objects around us, the jada padartha, the inert materials. We are also conditioned by a lot of these emotions and everything that we face. I know somebody may argue saying that, well, don't we need the emotions? Without my emotions, how can I deal with my grandchildren and all that? Yes, we do need them, but we also have to understand that they are nothing but upadis. They are tools, everything. We need to shift our attention slowly to that jnayam, to the eternal essence. So, jnanam, the means of knowledge that enables us always to mentally remove these upadis, was looked at, of course, 7 level. So once we have mentally removed this upadis, so it is only a mental thing. And of course, when I'm dealing with the world, if I've not done some reflection during my meditation time to understand that this entire world is nothing but this combination of this all things which are limiting me, everything. It's almost, and I think I gave you that small exercise which our Acharya also had told us, during my meditation, mentally, I have to close my eyes and think seriously about what is inert and what is that ultimate source. And this is something, it's just a reflection exercise. Like, for example, I take this I take this remote and I tell, okay, this remote is inert. I take this phone, it is also inert. I take this, everything which is outside me. Then I move on to my physical body. But even before going to the physical body, I have to see what are all the stuff which my physical body is attracted to outside, including not, I mean, so, we've talked about in the past, what are the 5 or 6 things that we get attracted to? It is actually all the objects in the world, like we talked about the phone, the TV, all these things. Not only that, also situations. I love the situation, or I love to be in the company of people. Even that, we have to say that, okay, that is an upadhi, that is limiting me. What about the weather? It's extremely hot right now in Chennai. I just came to Chennai last night, and Chennai is extremely hot. Kerala, it's pouring like anything. Now, for the next 6 months, it's going to be pouring rain, you know. So, even that aspect of it, the very fact that I say that, oh my God, I have to get out of it, that is a limitation. So all these are nothing but limitations which are essentially limiting me. So Krishna says that try to go beyond all this and then reflect upon what that name is, what that ultimate is. So only those who have inquired into this essence, he says, essentially are the ones who are qualified to attain that state of Ishvara, which is that moksha or liberation. But this state in which I would inquire into Ishvara, it cannot happen unless I become a friend of Ishvara. Let's start with being a friend of Krishna, Let's start being, and then from there on, moving on to being a devotee. And that is what in the 12th chapter was all about devotion, preparing a mind for devotion. So, a devotee, who is a devotee? A devotee is one who knows that whatever he sees, whatever he hears, whatever he touches is nothing but Ishvara. To that extent, I have to come, I look at every upadhi. For example, earlier, if I thought that, these objects were nothing but very inert or whatever they are, I can get away with it. But I superimpose that feeling that even that is nothing but Ishvara. My people with whom I'm interacting, they are Ishvara. So that is how I become a devotee of Ishvara. So I need to become a devotee of Ishvara. So all this was actually explained at the end of the conclusion of the 19th shloka, where he concludes saying that madbhava, this madbhava, madbhaktaha etat vijaniya madbhavayaya upadyate. So thus, he says, iti kshetram tatha jnanam. So now we are able to understand what is kshetram, what is jnanam, what is jneyam. And once I know this, I become that devotee. So that devotee who touches, feels, it's everything for that person, it is nothing but that Ishvara. So I become a friend of Ishvara, I become a devotee of Ishvara. Only that person becomes qualified to enter my Mad Bhavayaya Upadyate, becomes qualified to enter that state. So, which is what we did. So, these were the 4 steps. I need to understand that jnanam, that 20 values through which I can, then my mind becomes ready for that knowledge. And once I know that knowledge, then I understand what is really keeping me in this world. That is that bondage. And then I will know really what this one. So, it is similar to, I mean, simple, basic example I can think of is, for example, losing weight. If I totally understand what is it that is leading me to gain weight or whatever, then I understand this, all the things that causes me to keep me in bondage or keep me in gaining my weight, right? Then once I know, I slowly start to take out through understanding. And of course, even here, maybe this kind of steps will help us for losing weight, which is, if I reflect upon it, what are the things I actually write it down, and every day I use my way of, journaling or keeping track of everything, but with pure understanding. If somebody were to say, okay, you just follow the keto diet, or so many different diets are there, blindly, it's not going to work, right? I will still be in bondage. So this is kind of a very simply that thing what he talked about. So that is the essentially the significance is, it from a broad perspective, we learn, we've learned all what the Twampada is all about, the individual's path to the divine. We've also now, seen many different ways in which how we can understand what who a Sthita Prajna is, who has attained that steady wisdom, all that. But we have not been told really how to get there. Then in Tatpada, we learned a lot about the universe, the 7th through all that thing. So here in this starting of the 13th chapter, as we're getting into this Tattvamasi, we did Tvam, Tat, and then this Asi part of it, where we're about to receive this knowledge of this Kshetrajna or Jnata, the knower of the field, on how this one and what he needs. So we are slowly and slowly turning our attention inwards. And we are now really told, what are the changes we need to do. And from that point, this verse is very, very significant, for us. It is really about finally, the spiritual journey, which allows us to clearly understand, gives kind of clarity also for us on the goal of our knowledge itself. So that is why this particular thing is very important. So as we're moving into the shlokas 22 to 26, as much as it is dealing with Prakriti and Purusha, which is Prakriti meaning matter, and Purusha, some people may say there's a soul or whatever, but we don't really like the word soul, because soul means the whole bunch of things. It is not just in our view. It is a soul would be something like our sukshma sharira, which leaves the body, right? So here we look at Purusha as the spirit, and that is the aspect that we are going to work with in this next 6 shlokas. So in shloka number 20, basically Krishna begins a new topic, right? He now will describe about how we are falling into the trap of samsara, this whole cycle of birth and death. So in many respects, as we start looking from the shloka number 20, we will see that it is a kind of a continuation of the discussion of all the way to our Tatpada Vichar. In Tatpada Vichar, in chapter 7, we had talked about this Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti, the Apara, which is a low Prakriti, and the higher Prakriti, which is Para Prakriti. So just to recap a little bit, at that time, we said the lower Prakriti, or Apara Prakriti, it talks about the 5 elements, space, earth, water, etc., all that, plus Manas, Ahankara, and the Buddhi. Okay. Whereas the higher Prakriti or Para Prakriti in the 7th chapter, he talks about the that which brings everything alive, that which brings the whole jiva alive. That's how we discussed at that point. And we also said, that higher nature comprises, which is the experiences subject. And in many ways, from 7 through 12, we really established who is that Ishvara. Okay. Now, here in 20 onwards, you will see that lower nature, which is called Apara Prakriti there, is now termed as Prakriti. Okay. And what was termed as Para Prakriti is actually the Purusha. So first, Krishna will actually say that both these aspects of Ishvara are without beginning. So whenever I'm sure many of your kids would have come and told you about, the Darwin's theory of evolution. The other aspect which we always talk about is when was this universe born? I'm sure if you do a beautiful Claude using AI tool or whatever, it will give you the whole history of when was this universe born. There was a particular date. Maybe it was like 20,000 years ago and everything. It'll definitely give you all that. But is that how we look at the beginning of time and everything? So I don't know if our Anant is there. Oh, Anant is not here today. But Suvarna or anyone, have you faced any questions like that from your children? When was the universe born? And
Hari Om, no. Mine, I didn't face that kind of questions, but definitely the curiosity that the science can uh, go that far back and investigate everything, that part of it was the curious part, not actually this part. But once uh, uh, my daughter became part of Bal Vihar and Chinmaya Mission, that definitely, it took on, by the time she graduated, that definitely helped with some of those questions did get answered, even though she
Right.
might have never asked me. But as she uh, was going through the higher grades, when they do the self unfoldment and all that, it I could see the difference.
Right. Right. I mean, the thing about it is, I wanted to see about Vedanta, when they talk about Prakriti, Apara Prakriti, and everything. And obviously, the question of the birth of the universe, all that comes in. And that's why I just kind of brought this question up here, because Prakriti, when was Prakriti born? That question may come about, right? And here we are saying, in a sense, um, Maya also is another name sometimes you give for Prakriti. But then the minute we say Maya, Maya, immediately we think the word illusion, right? And we think illusion is something like virtual reality and everything. So we kind of, so in that sense, Maya and Prakriti is actually the same thing also. But Prakriti, we call this also as a power which is wielded by Ishvara. It is sometimes beyond the comprehension of our intellect, because with intellect we start asking these questions, and that's why I was just throwing that asking you that question also, just for us to think sometimes is, so even this word Prakriti, if you think about it, even though we are facing Prakriti, I touch, feel everything, that is nothing but Prakriti, correct? So we may say, oh, I feel everything, so isn't that Prakriti? So that is one way to understand Prakriti, but at the level of Advaita Vedanta, you can see that even that Prakriti, which is nothing but part of Maya, you know, and that by itself is a big discussion, which of course, through all these chapters, we'll come to it. But I'm just introducing that idea. So it is, but let's come back to the ground level. Okay. So let's come back to the ground level, which is the Prakriti. So it is that Prakriti which is giving rise to the five elements that produces this entire visible universe. But does that mean that one time there was only five elements, none of us were there? These kind of questions may come about, right? Did we have only space, air, water, and then over a period of time they became something else? Then they broke into small fragments. Is that how it happened? No, not really. We have to seriously um, this is really where sometimes this great genius of a rishis comes in. How did they do all this thinking with only the mental laboratory, Through this mental laboratory, they were able to visualize, yes, at some point there was this five elements which is producing this entire universe. And what is this universe? This universe is nothing but a combination of all those five elements which have undergone all these modifications. And not only have they gone modifications, I have one infographic, I guess, infographic which I made myself, a PowerPoint, which shows the Shad Vikaras, all these modifications. But along with that, Prakriti also has the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, not just alone by the qualities, what we mean, but qualities in the mental state, but qualities of the physical state of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. You know, all that also is something that is part of Prakriti. So in all this, the way we in Vedanta we have looked at, I'm sure you would have, maybe next week I'll see if I can pull in one of those things from internet. It's beautiful. I mean, um, our Prakriti, if you look at it, the way, we have all the yugas, right? The Treta Yuga, Kali Yuga, then Dwapara Yuga. All these are like what, 435,000 years, one yuga. And twice a yuga is Dwapara Yuga, three times a yuga is Treta Yuga. in total, imagine the amount of years that this Prakriti has always been there. But in science and everything, they will say, no, 20,000 years ago, this whole thing was born. But we don't say that, right? And that is this indication, which is in the shloka number 20. It says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhi Anadi Ubhau Api. So both this Prakriti, which has got so many elements and all that, along with something which is powering it up, both of them have been there, Anadi, beginningless. So we call this entire list of that yugas, 432,000 into 10 times or whatever, that much amount of time is one pralaya, one whole time. And it is not as if at that time everything just is gone and then again it is born. The way we define birth and death itself is different. We just believe that everything goes back into a state of pralaya, where if a mango tree was giving at one point Banganapalli or this Imam Prasad or whatever, I'm getting very familiar with the names of all the mangoes, because it's amazing the amount of mango. This year was a bountiful crop of mangoes in India. Anywhere you go, plenty of mangoes. So it's not one time which is going to be Banganapalli will suddenly become something else. No. Everything goes back into Pralaya and then again it comes back. So that is this aspect of Prakriti that we are talking about. They are Anadi, they are beginningless. They have always been there. So that is why this Prakritim Purusham Cheva. So he says, know and understand that both that Prakriti as well as a Purusha, they've always been there, Anadi. Okay. And the modifications, like we talked about the modifications in my next one, we'll see that what are all the modifications that happens to this one. Okay, know that they are born to be of man. The modifications. So it's only the Prakriti part of it. The Prakriti, which is the Vikaras, the qualities with a Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, they both are there. So this is, I just wanted to use one of the PowerPoint basic tools. This is already, I'm sure if I put this into Claude or something, it'll come out with a much better PowerPoint slide, but I made this by hand. So these are the 6 modifications of not only what our physical body, we can see that from our own physical body, right? Jayate, it is born. And then after that, there is growth in a body, right? We grow all the way up to whatever time, and then the growth stops. And then there is only maintenance which happens, which is viparimate, vardate, jayate, vardate, viparimate. And then slowly, I think many of us can relate to this. We are at the state where we can feel that sort of the decay happening, especially starting with knee pains and all this ankle and everything which needs a lot more work. So apakshiyate, starting to decay, and then ultimately, of course, leading to this vinashyati, the death. So this is basically the modifications, but it is not as if something is born out of nothing. And this, we just believe that, we come from something, we go back to that something. So this modifications along with this sattva, rajas, tamas is basically what Prakriti is all about, right? So Prakritim Purusham Chaiva, so it's basically, he's just saying that it is not as if we did not exist at all before. Purusha, this is all Anadi. And he just wants to point out that even Ishvara existed before. Since the universe has, it looks like as if it has a beginning and death, but in reality, it was always there. And this is something that I wanted to emphasize upon. Prakritim Purusham Cheva, api. So, moving on to shloka number 21. Now, he starts to talk about this karya karanam kartrutve. What are the constituents? Are the constituents also something, which just came just like that? So the connection he wants to do from here is, connecting what that kshetra is to Prakriti. So after this Prakriti, everything arises as an effect in that Prakriti. So all the way from the gross elements, like I said, the space, earth, element, etc. So they all are part of Prakriti, and Kshetra is nothing but also something which is originating from this Prakriti itself. So Kshetra is nothing but this Prakriti itself, which, again, because Arjuna asks this question, what is the origin of the field? So he says, so Karya, which is body, Karana, instruments, so this itself is a source of action. Hetu is a cause, and the cause is that Prakriti itself. And then Purushaha Sukha Dukkhana Bhoktritve Hetu Uchyate. So Bhoktritve, who is the enjoyer about all this? Enjoyership is really not, if you think about it, it's not really an independent existence. So something has to be done before a thing can be enjoyed. And that is this kartritve. Kartritve, the feeling of the doership of the action. So kartritve precedes bhoktritve, bhoktritva. Even kartritva is not an independent existence. Something has to be done before a thing can be enjoyed. And that is this jnatritva. Jnatritva, or the knowership, the knowledge that I am doing. So Jnatritva precedes this Katritva, and therefore this line has to be taken to all three states of experience, namely enjoyership, doership, and this Jnatritva or knowership. Okay, all these things require some amount of a power. It has to be powered. It's like the computer cannot, it's not enough if I just open the screen up, put it in front of me. I need to connect this to the battery, which the battery in this one has to be charged in order for everything to happen, right? So it needs that sentiency or the power for this. So for this reason, the key, point brought it is that the entire kshetra cannot be experienced, okay, because unless there is that power is there, the field has to be regarded as inert, and the field is powered by something like this consciousness. So this ultimately, who is the experiencer of this whole thing? It is that Purusha. The Purusha is the one which is a doer. Purusha is the one which is a knower. The knower of field is what gives that entire sentiency through creation. The field, so that part of it needs to be understood here. And that ultimately is, it's a root of this delusion. So when I say that I experience the mind, intellect, and senses, they are known to be inert, right? That's what we said from all the way from shloka number 5, 6 of 13th chapter, and even in 7th with this aparaprati. So where could the sentiency which is needed to have the experience come from? So it is, of course, from the Purusha, and it is a Purusha that is responsible for all our experiences. Whether it is, the joy that I get from enjoying my gulab jamun, or the sorrow I face after eating 10 gulab jamuns, everything is because of that Purusha. Okay, so this has kind of an enormous implication for us. It is really a turning point from really understanding who are, finally, who is that I? So there is this mistaken identity which we think that, this mind and intellect is the experiencer of the emotions, right? But the mind and intellect is also part of the Prakriti. So that is something, we need to understand. So that everything, Purusha is completely different. That part of Purusha, which is enjoying everything, is still part of this aspect of Prakriti. So we tend to always look at it the other way around. So who is that I completely we have to understand. So it's again bringing back this. We talked about this projector example, all the way in the seventh chapter. So I pulled some of my slides from seventh chapter to here to give that feeling. So if you imagine, an IMAX theater or something on which you have the Prakriti or nature which projects the life of every human being, right? So imagine this big serial that is going on, and some of us who lost touch with how India made serials and all that, it's amazing. I'm actually watching one of those old serials, something just to relax my brain sometimes. It has got 1,500 episodes. So it's amazing that imagine 1,500 episodes where every small thing is being, and it's fun to watch it actually because that is how our life is. We kind of don't pay attention to the fact that we as this ego, we're going through so much of these experiences. But that serials really show the kind of experiences. Then we realize, okay, even I was going through all this at one time. So it shows really, that Prakriti can create through these projections. It projects the body of a person, it can project the karana or the instruments of the body, which includes all these five sense organs, right? So the important point here to keep in mind is, Prakriti is the source for all our actions in the world, but not the Purusha. Okay? The Purusha gives only that awareness. Once that electricity is going through this projector and everything that is showing on the screen, you know, is part of this Prakriti. Typically, for all of us, we attach so much of importance to our own I factor. The doership, we say that I did it, I'm enjoying it, I'm doing this one. But if I can have that detachment, or if I can divorce myself from this part of me which is doing everything, okay? So there is that one part of me which is doing everything, all that, which is being directed by everything which is there in the Prakriti, and to tell myself that I am not that, I am something even beyond that. So that's the part, the doership, like I said. So Lord Krishna is making it very, very clear to all of us that this intellect, the ego, the mind, and anything that the body, gets any kind of input from this one, all this, it's being, of course, being directed by even our vasanas, for example. And all this is part of Prakriti that continues to be, which is projecting this IMAX movie of this world. But that Purusha, or the biggest I, that has nothing to do with it. But Prakriti is the one which is doing everything. So what is then that Purusha? The Purusha is this, we call this as the awareness principle. I mean, again, the word awareness in English sounds, oh, I'm aware of everything. The minute we say, but it is that because of which I am aware. That is a Purusha. So, from our perspective, that Purusha then is concerned only with the experience of we think that he's concerned with only one body out of million bodies in the IMAX. So what is his exact role? The role of the Purusha is to know, Nyatritva that we said. For example, if I put a drop of something really which is very pungent on my tongue, right? It sends an electric current to the mind based upon what that stuff is made of. Like suppose something really strong, maybe even strong lime or whatever. Okay. So it's only because of the Purusha that I come to know that I have, it gives me that capacity to understand that this is bitter. Okay. So on one level, Purusha knows what all these senses and the minds they report. Without the Purusha, there will be nothing to know what the Prakriti is projected. So it would be almost like projecting a movie without an audience to see it. So when this knowledge of this pungent taste, right, is filtered through my vasanas or through my programming, it can either make me enjoy it. Maybe somebody might like, maybe I should talk about Andhra food, right? Andhra food, if it is extremely spicy, somebody may enjoy it, somebody may just not like it, right? So this difference in this also, which is really filtered through our vasanas and everything, that awareness to know what it is, that aspect is what Purusha is giving to us. So it is because of the Purusha I'm able to experience that pungent taste. It is because of the Purusha that I might say that I love it, I hate it, all these things. So literally in these two lines, we are in these two lines of this shloka here. Karya karana katritve hetu prakriti uchyate. So this whole thing is literally because of that Purusha, we're able to understand that everything that is born out of Prakriti, which is the body mind, the body mind intellect complex, everything is part of Prakriti. And Karyam, again, here means the body. It's a technical meaning. Normally, Karyam mean a product. But in this case, Karyam means actually the physical body, which is experiencing all these things. So sometimes, Karyam, Karana Uchyate. Karana can be, it's the instrument, or Karana, which is an instrument, or Karana, which may be the cause. You can interpret that Karana or Karana, both of them, as that way. Ultimately is the, Prakriti is really the one where the effect and everything is, but the cause ultimately you could call that as a Purusha, which is making it do it. So Purushaha Sukha Dukkhanam Bhoktritve Hetuhu Uchyate. So Purusha is not located anywhere as an object. The Purusha, or the awareness principle, as we say, is a very subject which is enclosed, we can say, in this whole physical body or the material body, and who's also enclosed in the mind. And that enclosure is the Prakriti or the thing. So consciousness, Purusha is a consciousness, and Prakriti is the everything connected with matter, mind, intellect, ego. Again, ego in the fact that we are the conditioned part of it. Conditioned. Ultimately, that absolute I is that Purusha, absolute I. Okay? But conditioned I is this ego. So Krishna is saying Purusha is that Bhokta, and that Bhokta Purusha has Sukha Dukkana Bhoktritve Heturuchate. So Bhokta is the Bhokta, meaning that Bhokta is a witness or the Sakshi, we can say, which is experiencing everything of the Prakriti. So it is experiencer of this Prakriti, and therefore, Prakriti is, of course, like I said, the body-mind complex, And not only the body mind complex, Prakriti Sukha, it is also the Bhoktritva, which is of the what, which is of the joy and happiness. And not only that, also everything else. Like whenever my body is healthy, whenever my body is unhealthy, all this, including even likes, dislikes, raga, dvesha, and we explained all those motions, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, matsarya, everything. So the Purusha is the one that is enjoying all this. Okay, so this is the important thing that we need to understand about what is the Purusha and Prakriti here. So, any questions or thoughts to share before we go to shloka number 22?
It's a lot to process. And understanding the difference between the absolute I and the conditioned I. The
Right.
conditioned I is where we are all at. We get lost in this
We get
conditioned I.
lost. Exactly. That's a good way. Yeah.
We get lost in this conditioned I, and uh, everything is this conditioned I causes a lot of mischief in our brain. All the senses, everything, it causes a lot of mischief, and most of it is mischief. Nothing, 90% of it is mischief. The 10% that when it is not mischief is when we are the most productive. And that
Uh-huh.
is, so it's a daily struggle to make sure that the mischief is under control, and not to be too not to get too this the whole thing is we have to control our senses, but the mind plays so many tricks on us, just calming the mind down, making sure, being aware that this is the conditioned I and not the absolute I. Just remembering that fact alone takes a lot of energy, and that's it's difficult, but
Right. And I wish it was as easy, again, going back to the example of losing weight, where I can actually see something happening, right? So all this is only mental. Mentally,
exactly.
we need to get out of this conditioned I to become that absolute I,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Your question about the space and everything, how did we come, and how, actually, more than my kid, I actually follow those some of those podcasts about the space, and all the new discoveries that are happening regarding how uh, the everything the NASA is doing and all the other agencies, space agencies are doing to find out more about from where we came. I actually follow those more than while following those, these questions, this Bhagavad Gita and the Lord's Lord's uh, blessings of this Bhagavad Gita does come into effect. It's so overwhelming. This is all that the human scientists have, we as human beings, as scientists, have found this all out. But the, all of this came from the Lord. It is just so, it is, it's happy. It is, uh, it's, it's just, I don't have the words to express the, what I feel when I realize that, as I'm listening to those podcasts, it's like mind boggling that all of this, the Lord has made it possible for us. He has, he's the creator. He has given us the means to discover all this, and he is the knowledge. It's like he's the clay,
Yeah.
he is
Mhm. Right.
the creator, and he is the creation. Everything.
Right.
It
Right.
is so mind-boggling. It is really, uh, it's really mind-boggling.
Right. So if we can keep that thought, what you were just saying, he is the creator, he is the creation, he is also the enjoyer, you know, and me, when I identify myself completely into the podcast and everything, I'm still conditioned and I'm at that level. But slowly, how can I bring myself from that conditioned ego to a Sakshi person? Okay, even this is my glory. If I can pat myself at the back and tell, even what I'm watching on the podcast and everything is, I am there giving life to this podcast. Okay, it's okay, even in a ego way, if we can first start ourselves to tell ourselves, you know what, I'm not, I'm enjoying this great beauty. The reason I'm enjoying this beauty is not as a conditioned ego, but as the one that I'm powering all that and I'm empowering everyone to do everything.
Yeah,
If I can
absolutely.
get that thought into my head, that is what all these shlokas are trying to get us to do, from 13th chapter onwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just for the way I look at it is all of this, the Lord has, it's all Lord's grace. It's all Lord's uh
Right,
his power, his yoga.
right.
All of this is the Lord's yoga. It's like I'm just a speck. I'm not even
Mhm.
a speck in
No, we're
this
not even a speck.
speck.
We are even beyond that.
Exactly, and it's so I love both when I watch those podcasts and when I start remembering the Bhagavad Gita shlokas. That really helps me. It calms me down. Let's put
Right,
it. It calms me down. It's like it's it's the ultimate truth that
right.
this. It's I like the combination. It calms me down.
No, it is needed. See, it is absolutely needed. Even, in fact, that's why a dose of Bhagavad Gita is needed for each one of us every day before we start the day, Because if I can keep this information in front of me as I'm going to gather all the experiences, what I'm going to for the whole day, it will help me to be grounded. So even when something doesn't happen the way I want it to be, I will say, it's okay. This is a play of my own Maya. I have created this Maya. I am part of it. Somewhere I did something because of which I'm seeing the effect here. It's literally, maybe I did some karma in United States, which is 7,000 miles away. The effect of it, I'm seeing it here now, but it's all part of my Maya. Something like that. I have to constantly remind myself. So it keeps me grounded then, and I can kind of laugh it off or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sunita ji, Hari Om. I have a
Yes,
question.
Jayashree.
Can we go back to the slide before 25, slide 25, please?
Uh-huh.
I missed it, so I just wanted to.
Sure, sure, sure. So this is 30. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think no, before this one. Maybe 23. 1 second. Yeah, I have 23. After that, after this, what is the next slide? After this, Prakritam Purusham,
After
Chaiva,
Prakritam is the
Shloka 21.
21.
Maybe this one. I think I had this one. The next one, maybe.
And this one,
Yes,
maybe,
this one.
this
This one. I
one.
wanted this one. Just capturing it. Okay, thank you so much.
Right, right. So this is This is about, trying to remind us
Okay.
that as a conditioned I, at the ultimate, I am that Purusha, okay? The Purusha, which is powering everything, but also this entire world that I'm experiencing
Mm-hmm.
is actually me alone doing the whole thing, but as a conditioned I. So
Okay.
Purusha Sukha Dukhanam, I'm enjoying it, and I'm also experiencing the sorrow. And so ultimately, he's saying, Bhoktritve Hetu Uchyate.
Okay.
Ultimately, I am that Purusha who's enjoying this whole thing, said to be the cause
Okay.
of
Okay.
experiencing all of them.
Thank you, Sunitha.
Yeah. So coming to finally in shloka number 22, we are talking about that how the jiva may be described as kind of reflection of that Purusha in the matter of Prakriti. Jiva begins to identify with its own material, that every material environment. And this identification actually, Vedanta, we call this word tadatmya, which uh, is like the first downfall. The second I identify myself, and in a very basic example for all of us too, the second I totally identify myself with the role in which I'm playing, obviously anything and everything where me as a role is participating, I have to go through whatever experiences I'm going through, right? Simple thing, I'm an organizer for a party or something like that. Let's say Bharatiya Temple is organizing some major fundraising event, and they tell me that you have to be in charge of this fundraising event. And I put on the hat of the organizer. Then what happens? Everything connected to that. People screaming at me because some things are not going well, or people praising me like anything because I have, raised $3 million or whatever, yeah, anything, all this thing is my tadatmya, my identification with the role, which creates the delusion of the fact that I'm so important and I'm doing all this, right? So if I can understand that kind of a simple example, here also we can see that when Purusha is identifying itself with the Prakriti, it experiences all the qualities born out of that identification. That is the part which needs to be understood. It's only because of the identification that all these experiences are happening, and all these experiences lead to whatever consequences we go through. Karanam guna sangaha asya. Contact with the qualities is a cause of its births in sat, asat, yonihi, many, many wombs, and it's born, so that is what he's saying. So it's only because of that identification with all this, it produces the bondage which keeps the jiva in the material life. So that Purusha, which is seated in matter, experiences the qualities, it experiences the qualities of that Prakriti. And as I said, the Prakriti is not just the five elements, it is including everything, the mind, the intellect, and this conditioning, which is conditioning the ego with all these emotions, all these things, which is again born out of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, in its various, this one, all this, a whole chain of karmas, reactions happen, and this causes the bondage. So these shlokas from 20 to 24 is basically trying to tell us why we are not first this tadat. So this is a very important shloka as a concept to understand that tadatmya thing. So just, I'm just put this example of, imagine, you're watching something on TV, there are, this game is going on. Of course, I should have probably put an IPL cricket match or something, because that happens all the time here. And every house, people is a fan of one particular team or the other. So uh, now we see, two teams are getting involved in this fight, and this our tadatmi happens because I basically get involved with one of this, but the coach who's standing there, he is really a witness. He doesn't care. He sees everything happen. He doesn't side with both of them. His duty is basically, to ensure that the game is happening, right? So that's the kind we need to be, is, have that role of the boxer in here, not being involved with this aspect of it. So, because of this identification, I tend to really become, I not if I lose this match here, for example, I'll come back. I want to be in the ring again until I win, and that part of it. So essentially, that is what he's trying to say in shloka number 22, is that everything is because of the identification with the cause. So it is literally an on-off switch for us, right? On switches, when I identify myself with all the roles and everything, I experience everything. But off switches when I'm not identified. So I have the choice whether to turn on the switch or turn off the switch. Easier said than done. How can I always be just like that boxer visualizing everything that's going on, right? How can I be that in the midst of everything? But that's what this shloka is really trying to bring out, you know? Oh my God, I didn't realize I'm 10 minutes over time. So I guess this next one is also taking on that role of tadatmya. So he says, um, just like I showed that example of the coach, you know, so the Purusha, by identifying, acts everything, as the enjoyer. Mostly we are the Bhokta, but I also have to understand that Purusha as the supporter, Purusha as Anumanta, as a spectator, as the Lord, and finally that ultimate transcendent self. So I'll leave you with that thought, and we'll move on to 24 to 26 shlokas next week. But just keep in mind that this is the, sorry, didn't change the date. But so we'll stop at this point. Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you, everyone.
You have to stop the recording, Sunita ji.
Yeah, I will.